Dear Tattooed, I was out with my son at Calumet Park around 8 p.m., walking the trail as we've done since he was about 6 years old. We were just talking about life and our plans for the upcoming summer when something large flew over us near the field house. At first I thought it was a goose. We've seen plenty flying around the city and suburbs lately, but it quickly became clear that this was something much larger. What I saw looked like a massive bat, but with a distinct, human-like shape, about 6 feet tall by my estimate. It was blackish gray in color, with an enormous pair of wings that spanned 8 to 10 feet across. My son was in shock and asked what it was. I could only answer, I don't know. The creature flew up and over the field house, heading towards the tennis courts. I've even heard a couple nearby yelling surprise as it passed overhead. The entire encounter lasted about 30 to 35 seconds from the moment we spotted it to when it vanished behind the field house. I'd estimated speed at around 40 to 50 miles per hour. It flew just above the streetlights, maybe 15 to 20 feet over our heads. Though it was dusk, there was still enough light to clearly see its shape as it passed overhead. I couldn't make out any finer details because of its incredible speed, but the size and form were unmistakable. We circled around the field house, hoping to spot it again, but saw nothing else. The rest of the evening went by quietly, and I decided to share this only after reading about similar sightings around the city. Thanks. Signed, Rob. Dear Tattooed Biker, I'm an Arkansas native and an AG student pilot. I've hunted and fished all my life, but nothing could prepare me for what happened one night. This is my story. The incident took place in Cache, Arkansas, about 20 minutes west of Jonesboro, in the early hours of June 7th of this year, around 1:30 a.m. My buddy Justin and I were just wrapping up a night of frog gigging along the ditches of the field roads. For context, the road we were on had deep barred ditches on either side and stretched for miles with nothing in sight. No trees, no houses, no buildings. We had driven up and down that same road 4 or 5 times that night, so if anyone had been out there, our headlights or spotlights would have picked them up. We spotted a big bullfrog, and I leaned out of the driver's seat holding the spotlight while Justin walked to the back of the truck to grab the gig. Before he even reached the bed, a monotone woman's voice came from the darkness. No more than 20 yards out in the field. It simply said, "Hey." I turned to Justin, who was frozen in fear, staring between me and the field. And then we both heard it again. The same voice in the same tone, saying, "Hey, help." Justin bolted back to the truck, jumped in and slammed the door. My heart was racing, and I grabbed my .45 from the console, thinking that might give me a little courage, and I shined the spotlight toward the field. But the beam barely reached across the ditch before flickering out and dimming. It was like the battery had suddenly died, and we couldn't see anything beyond that. And that's when I just floored it and got us out of there. Later that night, I found your channel, still shaken, still trying to make sense of what had happened. I honestly don't know how to explain it, and thinking about it just now gives me chills. Signed, AC. ATV. I was out with my son by the banks of Little Calumet on the northwest side of Hedgeworth Park, at a spot that we've had some luck fishing in the past. It's near the Trestle Bridge that runs east to west over the 130th Street. The spot takes some effort to reach, but it's been worth it. We've pulled in some decent-sized catfish there. Well, around 7:30 p.m., we were packing up our gear when we heard a sound that reminded me of a train when its brakes go screeching, the kind you hear when a train slows down. The strange part was there wasn't a train in sight. Usually you can feel it rumble and hear it loud and clear when one passes, but that evening it was quiet, aside from the occasional car or truck going by. And that's when, from our left, something flew across the river toward the trees. At first we thought it might be a giant bird, until we noticed it was completely black and way too big. Moments later, we heard the same sound again, and this thing shot straight up and over the Trestle Bridge, before vanishing down the river. And it wasn't like any bird that I've ever seen. Its wings had to span at least 10 feet across, and the body looked to be about the size of a grown man. It flew fast, like a literal bat out of hell, and disappeared within seconds. My son and I just stood there speechless until he mentioned reading something about giant bat sightings in the Chicago area. Maybe that's what we saw. We packed our things and got out of there real quick. Partly because we were spooked and partly because we weren't exactly supposed to be fishing there to begin with. Later that night, he showed me different sites in your channel that talk about reports like that. And that's what led me to send this in. Sorry, I couldn't give more details, but honestly, I'm just grateful we weren't any closer. Signed, Tim. Dear Biker, it was October 2024, around 5 a.m. when I pulled up to my usual hunting spot, deep in the woods of northwest Louisiana. The air was heavy and still, that kind of quiet that makes you feel like the woods are listening. I've been dealing with a serious hog problem this season. My trail cam hadn't caught a single deer in days, just hogs, tearing up everywhere around the feeder. So that morning, my plan was simple. Sit in the stand and thin a few of them out. I stepped out of my truck, slung my rifle over my shoulder, and started the 300-yard walk through the thick timber. My headlamp cut a narrow cone through the dark, and I swept my flashlight side to side as I went. About halfway there, something felt off. The usual forest sounds were suddenly gone. No crickets, no frogs, not even wind. It was just silent. As I neared the feeder, I shone my light toward the field, over to my left, and froze. Two bright red eyes were staring back at me from the tree line. The reflection hit me like a punch in the chest. They were over 6 feet off the ground. For a second, I tried convincing myself that it was just a deer, but that didn't make sense. No deer stands that tall. I kept my light locked on it. And the eyes, they didn't blink or move. They just watched, like it was studying me somehow. And then I could see the outline. Black fur, sharp white teeth glinting in the beam. The only way I can describe it is something tall. It almost looked like a skinwalker or something. A creature with wolf-like fur and razor-sharp teeth. I raised my rifle, but before I could even line up a shot, it bolted. Whatever it was went crashing through the brush, snapping small trees like twigs. It moved fast, faster than any human or animal that I've ever seen. Within seconds, the sound was gone and the woods went still again. I was closer to my stand than my truck, so I sprinted straight for it. I climbed up, locked the door, and sat in silence with my rifle, aimed at the entrance until daylight. The whole time, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still out there somewhere, watching me. Later, I did some research and found stories about the Rougarou, a Louisiana legend that seemed to fit what I saw. I haven't gone back to that spot since. Strangely enough, not long after that encounter, all the hogs disappeared, even though my feeder kept running. I just needed to share my experience somewhere. Signed, Benny. Hey TB. It was April 15th, 2017, and I was out on the lake with my husband and two other couples, celebrating a friend's birthday. We were about 2 miles from shore, off Montrose, about 10 p.m. The night was calm and we were laughing and talking when I just happened to look up, and I saw what looked like a giant bat. Now, it wasn't a fox bat, which I know is supposed to be the largest bat species. This thing was much, much bigger. It was roughly the size of my husband, who's 6'4", maybe even taller. It was completely black, its wings blotting out the stars, and its eyes seemed to catch and reflect the moonlight. Up against the bright backdrop of the sky, it looked darker than the night itself. This creature circled our boat 3 times, in total silence before flying off toward Montrose. Within seconds, it had melted into the darkness and was gone. About 5 minutes later, we spotted something else, a bright green object, moving slowly from north to south along the horizon. It wasn't a plane. It glowed this intense, almost neon green, and it was gliding across the sky about 2 miles away before it too disappeared from view. After that, no one spoke for a while. We all just sat there in stunned silence. And then a sudden sense of dread came over me, and I told my husband that we needed to get off the water immediately. I tried to take a picture of the bat when it was circling, but every shot came out completely black. A friend later suggested that I report what we saw to your channel. Thanks. Signed, Heather. Okay, biker. This story was told to me by a childhood friend's dad. My friend and I had known each other for years, and for most of that time, he lived in town, a small place in the dead center of Illinois, with maybe only 8,000 people. On the edge of town, off a country highway, sat the remains of an old pig farm and a slaughterhouse. Long shut down and falling apart. His family used to hunt on that land back in the 80s. Around our 8th grade year, he told me they were moving to a new house out in the country, part of a new upscale neighborhood being built about a mile from that old farm. His dad had just been promoted at the power plant. I started staying at his place more often because, well, it was awesome. A big house and knew everything. We'd explore the woods during the day and spend the nights inside, listening to music or messing around on Yahoo Chat. This was around 98 or 99. Well, one afternoon we came across a decent-sized pond out in the woods. In the middle was a small island. As soon as my friend saw it, he went pale. Without saying a word, he turned and started running back towards home. I followed, calling after him, but he wouldn't answer. When we got back to his house, his parents were in the kitchen, and they took one look at him and asked what was wrong. He told his dad that we found the pond. His dad's face went pale, and he immediately poured himself a glass of whiskey, which, for him, was rare. He told us to sit down and listen. He said when he was about 19, he had gone hunting there with his dad and brother. It was a slow morning, no decent deer, nothing moving. And that's when they heard something rustling across the pond. And what stepped out looked like a wolf, but there aren't any wolves around there. Not in our part of Illinois. Well, they watched it as it walked closer to the water. And then on its hind legs, it waded in, swam across, and then climbed up onto the island, still upright. Once there, it lay down and, unbelievably, appeared to fall asleep. They waited there, terrified until they were sure that it was out cold, and then they slowly backed away and left as quietly as they could. He said they have never hunted out there again. My friend's dad was never one for jokes or stories, and he didn't scare us for fun. He wasn't the type to make anything up, and that's why his story has always stuck with me. By the way, I just recently found your channel, and after hearing other people's encounters, I figured I'd share this one too. Signed, Jason. Hey biker, a few people have asked me to share my Bigfoot encounter with you, so here goes. Back in 2018, a friend of mine and we were camping in the upper Chattahoochee Wildlife Management Area in the North Georgia mountains, about 10 miles north of Helen, Georgia. The area has a long reputation for strange activity and cryptid sightings, especially Bigfoot reports. We were there just to camp and to explore, and we had parked along a Forest Service road and hiked about a mile along the Chattahoochee River to our campsite, a very primitive area. There wasn't another soul around. Well, the first night, after we had eaten and were getting ready for sleep, a large branch, about 5 feet long and maybe 4 or 5 inches thick, came flying into the campsite and crashed near the fire. It had come from high above, breaking through other limbs as it fell. We both jumped up and saw, about 20 feet away in the glow of the fire, a 6 or 7 foot tall creature with longish hair, a beard, and what looked like a thick jacket. At first, we didn't even think about Bigfoot, so we shouted out something like, "Hey, what the hell?" And then it just turned and ran. And that's when the details hit us. It was thin but muscular, with huge arms and legs. And it didn't run like a man. It sort of, loped, moving in this strange, heavy rhythm. And it made this deep, whooshing grunt sound. Its jacket wasn't clothing at all, but filthy, matted fur. And the smell, God, it was just rancid. It disappeared into those black woods, and we were left standing there, terrified. We grabbed up what we could, doused the fire, and got the hell out of there. The hike back to the car was one of the longest of my life. We stayed there in the car the rest of the night, just talking about what we saw. At first, we thought it might have been a wild man. There have been stories about those in that region for years, but the more we replayed it, the more it seemed like we'd come face to face with a Bigfoot. At dawn, we hiked back in, packed the rest of our gear, and left. Later on, when we talked to rangers working the area, none of them laughed at us or dismissed it. In fact, they said that Bigfoot sightings have been reported there for decades. One even told us that it was probably irritated by our fire and wanted us gone. Well, it worked. Ever since that night, I've been a believer. I've even joined a few Bigfoot expeditions, though none have felt as real as that moment in those woods. I still have a feeling that I'll see one again someday. Signed, Connor.
He's got got skulls on his arms, flames on his chest, rides a steel horse, won't ever rest. Chasing whispers through the foggy pines, searching for truths that slip through time. Moonlight bends where he rolls, the shadows speak. They've got souls, in shadows, leather and lore. He's knocking on the other world's door. Bigfoot's howl, dog man's glare, man in black just vanishing there. In shadows, truth to find, paranormal trails in his mind.